I'm going to explain how to develop multi-stream web app with Next.js. There was a many request one-by-one explanation for it, so I decided to create this tutorial. In this tutorial, I simplified many things in order to understand easily from original video, and also I switched to app router-based API in Next.js server-side components instead of page router. Here, I'm going to start the library, which I used in this tutorial. Basically, I'm using Next.js and Shadcn UI library. Shadcn is comprehensive UI components and easy to customize by user. Another important library are NextAuth and Redux, plus Redux Persistent to manage session state for both of Twitch and YouTube. Finally, React Player and React Twitch Embed are using for streaming play components. Okay, let's set up Next.js project at beginning. I'm using Next.js 14 with default settings. Create Next app takes time, so let's skip it. Now I'm going to install Shadcn library with just follow installation instruction with Next.js. I'm using New York style and stone color when you do init Shadcn. Also, I don't much care which font we used in this web app at moment, so I skipped it. Once you initialize Shadcn, then we could install each UI components, so let's install those what we need. Also, I'm using dark mode by Next theme, so let's use it as well. The default Next.js color theme is dark, but once you install Shadcn, then it become light mode. So let's change it dark again. Instruction given in Shadcn doc here, so we just follow it. By default, I want use it dark, so let's change default theme from system to dark. Now we completed install UI related library, so next is to install for following other library. Redux is the components which provide state management throughout components in project. And Persist is store state persistently. React icons, Lucid React are the just icons library and React Player for streaming. Lodash is useful kind of toolkit when you work in JavaScript. You can check for more detail what this can do. I'm going to create simple UI which has only sidebar, header, and main contents area. Recently, Shadcn updated to add resizable UI components, so I will use it. Those are no special things, so let's just code it. If you go to page.tsx, there is default Next.js code, but I don't need it everything, so just remove it and just remain main tag. And then I'm going to use resizable panel, which recently added in Shadcn. Let's simply copy and paste from first example. We want to use entire width screen, so let's remove max WMD from Tailwind class. And resizable components required client-side rendering, so we need to put useClient on top of this file. And I don't need resizable between header and main, so let's remove resizable panel group inside resizable panel of main contents. And just put fixed div. Okay, now you have simple 3-panel screen. Resizable panel that we can simply set panel size with percentage up to 100 for entire size and then put each panel size what you want. For example, 20/80 balance for sidebar and main contents respectively. In this case, let's put 20 on sidebar panel and 80 for main contents panel. You can also set maximum and minimum size, which you can resizable area by user interaction. Also, you can set action when user change size. This can utilize for dynamic UI change such as responsive UI. I will update in the end of this video. At moment, we don't need it, and let's finish some reaming small modification for UI balance. Okay, so the next step is to create user management button, which can change dark, light theme and login to Twitch and YouTube by using NextAuth. First, let's create header and login components, which has just some text. And import header component to page.tsx and import login component to header component. Login component is to integrate Twitch and YouTube authenticate method by using NextAuth, which is one of the important points in this web app. I will create avatar for showing user icon after login and button for login logout. At moment, let's use simple UI in order to understand behavior and make it cool UI later. Now we have avatar and login, logout button. So let's move to work for NextAuth method. I will following app router handling for new Next.js method. NextAuth need to create API for authentication callback. So I will create API directory under app, also auth directory under API. And create dynamic directory of NextAuth for route handling of NextAuth. And finally, we put route.ts under that dynamic directory for actual authentication API code. First, let's import NextAuth library on top of file and provider for these Twitch and YouTube. Create handler variable for new instance of NextAuth and put providers for Twitch and YouTube like this. Client ID and secret are required that you need to register each website as developer account and issue these. I put those information in .m file. Authorization given what contents allowed to use in this web app when you authenticate with method. OpenID and email come from default example of NextAuth, and we need to add scope for reading follows in Twitch and read only scope in YouTube. In second, by default, when you authenticate with NextAuth, it will not return back JWT token to your code. But I need token for call Twitch YouTube API. So we need to add token in session object and return it. So create JWT object to return access token and also provider information to identify which authenticator provide token. Access token and provide is not default variables in NextAuth, so let's add types for these. Create new directory called types and create nextauth.dts file import nextauth module and declare it to inherited. And then update session type to add access token and provider types like this. Okay, NextAuth needs state information throughout project so that you need to wrap your contents as auth provider. So let's create a file provider wrapper.tsx under components directory. And import session provider module and wrap children. Also, we have to apply on layout.tsx to enable this wrap component, so just import what we created provider wrapper and wrap your contents. Now you finish behind authentication logic. And then I will show you on client-side logic. Let's move to login component. And import sign-in, sign-out, use session module from NextAuth. And create data object from use session. This session object store user, token information when you authenticate it. Update sign-in button to add on-click method for sign-in action and sign-out as well. Okay? Now you can authenticate Twitch and YouTube. Also, when you authenticate, you can see your icon here. Now, I'm going to create Redux setup to store several state information. In my case, I will create dukeys directory under the lib directory and create store.tsx, slice.tsx files, and provider.tsx files. So let's start from slice.tsx file, which slice is create both of reducer and action of Redux within one object. Import create slice module from Redux toolkit and set initial state like this. And then create slice object here. I set name as selector, put initial state and reducers. I made many actions in here, but in this tutorial there is only need selected, save Twitch, YouTube session, select view and screen. I put state and action in arguments, and that state is actually what we want to save it, and action.payload gives value, which we performed like set value. And then export for those reducers, also slice itself. Okay, now let's move to store.tsx file. This will just set up how to store state information in Redux. Let's import combine reducers and configure store from Redux toolkit and slice as counter reducer from slice.tsx. I took counter reducer name from what I referred when I see first time of Redux example, but you can change it as you want, of course. Create root reducer with combine reducers and put coder for Kutner reducers. This will make root tree for entire Redux state. Then we just need export store by configure store, which has root reducer. And finally, we need to wrap again. This is same as theme or next auth. Let's import provider from Redux and store from store file. And then just wrap children. We should also apply in layout.tsx file so that let's import providers what we created and put providers on one upper from children. Okay, now we can store state information in my project, so let's change login component to save different session. Import useSelector and useDispatch from Redux. And create dispatch from useDispatch. Also create 3 different session variables such login, Twitch, YouTube, and those are useSelector to fetch state from Redux store. So far, we don't have no state because we didn't set action yet. Dispatch will apply action to store your state information. So I will put in use effect once session has been changed. This will trigger to store new session state for Twitch, YouTube, and login. We done to set up Redux, but still not much change from beforehand. Even we store session to store different variables, but we still lose session information once we authenticate with other authenticator. Let's check output token by using console.log. Now you sign in with YouTube. You see YouTube access token. So let's sign in with Twitch. Now we lost YouTube access token and only see Twitch. This is reason why I'm using Redux Persist to save different session. Okay, so let's move to use Redux Persist. In this tutorial, I will just store local storage as Persist backend. Create storage.tsx file under same directory of other Redux files, which is Dux directory. And import create web storage from Redux Persist. Create noop storage, which return 3 action for get item, set item, and remove item, but this is just for exception handling when it comes failed sync storage on Next.js. Then we need to update store.tsx file to use persistent config. Import storage from storage.tsx file and put persist config to set key and storage. Then I create persisted reducer and put it to configure store instead of root reducer. Also export persister with using persist store. Finally, provider.tsx file to update to use persist gate like this. We don't need to update client-side component generally, but let's not forget to add one thing when we sign out. Session information still remain in your local, so we want to purge it. So I added one line for handle sign out function for persister.purge before just sign out now. Let's check how it works. Now we can see two different session information correctly. And additionally, I want update a bit for UI, which indicated user connected either Twitch or YouTube. Current UI will show connected once you sign in either Twitch or YouTube anyway, but I want to correct it. So now we can use Twitch session and YouTube session in store on Redux. So let's replace it from session to Twitch session and YouTube session. Okay, now it is expected behavior that if I sign in Twitch, then Twitch icon only shows connected, and not connected YouTube. If I sign in both, then both icons shows connected.